What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 274 of The Ball is Round. I'm Andy Coronado, and as always, I'm joined by the local Montreal Greek legend, Elias Grigoriadis. How are we doing?
What I
We
want
can't get
to
it wrong.
hear, man. That's what I want to hear.
The Greek legend, baby.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. You know, the city's a buzz. The results may not necessarily be great, but the city's a buzz.
Who cares
European
about the
soccer's
results?
back. Barcelona looks great. What a time to be alive, you know?
Who cares about the results? It's all about the vibes, the good vibes at the stadium, right? So, as you guys know, we're here to talk about CF Montreal, Rose FC, and FC Super de Quebec, and all that fun stuff. But we got so much stuff to talk about. But first, the topic that everyone is talking about, and we have a very special guest to join us, Monsieur David Goss of Soccer Wise. I try to say it as best as I can, David. I'm sorry about that. So,
No, you nailed it. Considering
always,
it's a fake German name that's been Americanized and you're rolling around in sort of French accents, I think we're good.
he actually, and you know what? I remember, David. I don't know if you remember this, but the last time you were on our show, this feels like 20 years ago now. But we have brought you on to talk about the Laurent Courtois firing
Yes.
and that Marco Donatello. That
And
was
it's
that was a
it's
year
the
ago. That was
derby
like a
on
year and a
Wednesday,
half
right?
ago.
It's the Laurent Courtois derby.
yeah. What a perfect time to have you, right? Because
Yeah.
it's
One,
like
one year after the Wilfried Nancy derby, you know,
it's like
standing
just
appointment.
a full circle kind of thing.
Yeah.
Man. 'Cause, yeah, at that point, we were just thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure to put your comments, your question, whatever you want. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. But yes, so like I said, it's a we have obviously David here for a very special topic, Alexis Sanchez, because we do like to have his perspective league wise. Because last week we spoke with Hadi about our reaction locally, Montreal, game by game, how Alexis Sanchez and what we see in the city itself, right? But there's a whole league. I mean, I'm sure, David, you've seen it this whole week. All the videos that have come out of him visiting City Hall, like
Mhm.
getting, just trying to get to his car, and just it's just a buzz that is created. And we want to talk about all that with you, just kind of get your reaction from a league perspective, right? But first, because we had Elias that actually went to CF Montreal practice today and got to see Alexis Sanchez in practice. So, Elias, if you can maybe give us, we saw a bunch of videos and pictures, but we do want to hear your impressions, because there's two perspectives to it, Elias. There's media perspective, where how much media is there, and then there's obviously the engagement, right, of the clips and the videos and all that. You were at CF Montreal maybe a week ago or two, even before Alexis Sanchez even was in our minds, right? How much media was present there, and how much media was present today in his first practice?
Yeah, for non-media availability days, it's relatively scarce. Even I don't really make the trip down on non-media availability days because gas prices in this economy. Are you kidding me? But also, just we're covering three teams. Sometimes I go to Laval. Sometimes I go to the East End. Or not really East End really, but sometimes I end up down by the river. It's a bit of everything. But yeah, one thing for certain is that even though he wasn't speaking to the media today, he drew a crowd. He drew a pretty big crowd. It's going to be even bigger tomorrow when he actually speaks to the media before training. He's going to have a proper sit down with himself and Lucas Saputo. That's also going to be streamed. I think on the club's Twitter. Usually for big press conferences they do that. But yeah, it's huge. It's huge, and it's not lost on the media. There were some fans. It wasn't a crazy thing outside the Centre Nutrilet, but there were some people there that want to get a glimpse of him. I can confirm that he is in fact there, with the shorts hiked all the way up, very much on brand. But look, the first thing that hits you is just that, like, he's so good. He's like just with the ball, right? Just warming up, stuff that maybe you see on social media or even during games at the European level that are commonplace, that are done on a daily basis. He's doing it, but the gap is enormous, right? And that's one of the big things that strikes you whenever you see people of world-class quality, right? Because whether or not Alexis Sanchez is in the prime of his life or not, technically speaking, he's been a world-class player. And it's the consistency with which they do these things, right? All of these pro players can do really cool stuff and they can do very technically advanced stuff. They're professional soccer players. It's the ease and consistency with which they do it. And the stuff that he's doing is second nature. And today, since they didn't have a regen day on Sunday after their game on Saturday, they didn't have today was more or less a regen day. It was relatively light, and he looks fantastic. Right, tomorrow will be a more intense training session. They're trying to get Filippo da Faceta. They're trying to get him on at least on the team sheet for Columbus. But that's again, nothing's for certain. But but it'll be much more telling to see whether or not he's on the team sheet after training tomorrow, when they're going to be put through their paces a little bit more. But yeah, in terms of first impressions, it's definitely Alexis Sanchez. And even if he's not as quick, he's intuitive and his touch is fantastic. And the ball's like a magnet to his feet. It was something else.
And just one last question for you, Elias, about practice before we get into the fun stuff with David. Did you feel seeing him run around? You said it was region and all that. Did you feel he's far away from game shape? Do you feel he's close? So just based on like a few minutes of maybe seeing him, or you really can't judge based on what you saw?
You can't, right? Regen is by nature super easy, and apparently he's been training relatively intensely for the last few weeks now to kind of get back into shape, right? I mean, nowadays in off season, especially a consummate professional like him, there isn't really an off season. So based on what the work he's been doing, I'm assuming that this was a walk in the park. So I really think that it doesn't give that much of an indicator. But again, tomorrow will give us a much better idea about where he's at physically.
Okay. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff. But just before we get into fun stuff, before we get started, if you're enjoying The Ball Is Round, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. It really helps support the channel. And let us know your thoughts in the comments, just like Robbie P. Dubs that's asking David, what happened to extra time, man? I'm a regular listener. And he'll address all that if he wants to. But just make sure to follow us.
P. Dubs, listen to Soccer Wise twice a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week. We're on all the time.
Let's go. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But make sure to follow us on all social media. Okay, so just in case you've been living under a rock, I'm just going to catch everybody up as to what's been going on with CF Montreal. Alexis Sanchez has joined CF Montreal as a designated player on a contract that runs through the end of the 2027 sprint MLS season with an option for the 2027-2028 season. Massive move for CF Montreal, not just because he's a name, but because of what Sanchez could potentially bring on the field, right? But as I mentioned earlier, David, you've seen it all over social media just the first few days he's been here. From what I heard the mayor said, because I told this in other places and they weren't aware of it, but the mayor of Montreal is actually Chilean.
Chilean, I have heard.
So that's actually what happened is what the mayor said was that he arrived to the airport and didn't even go to Centre Nutrilait. He went straight to City Hall to see the mayor. So it's a little bit it's a little bit funny, but at the same time it goes to show the kind of hype he brings. So David, tell us maybe a little bit, and Elias, I'll ask you the same question a little bit later. So what was your immediate reaction when you see that tweet or that notification is that Alexis Sanchez to CF Montreal? What's going through your mind?
I think you start with, there's another person named Alexis Sanchez. I wonder,
so good.
What 21-year-old Venezuelan player that they signed for a low-end contract that this player is going to be. I've never heard of them before. And then you start going through and you do the oh, wow, that one. And then I think most of us had to go look at what Alexis Sanchez has been doing for the last 12 months. Because I think for as big a name of a player as it is, obviously Chile not making the World Cup takes him off the map a little. But I remembered him at Marseille. I can't say that I really remembered watching him a ton in La Liga last year. So I think that was sort of everyone checks the age, checks the stats, checks to see where he's at, and try and figure out what player is CF Montreal getting. Elias, as you talked about, class is eternal for a lot of players. So there are things Alexis Sanchez can do or see on a soccer field that he will be able to do and see his whole life that other people can't. The question is all that in-between stuff, how much of it will be there. And so I think you start digging in, trying to figure out what we're going to get from all of this.
Elias, what was your reaction when you got that notification? Because I don't know if you saw the
excitement. But no, kind of like David. I was like, because in that little stinger video, when they say, Alexis number 10, you're kind of just like, it almost passes over, right? And I don't know if anyone who's listening has seen Attack on Titan, but there's a huge like reveal that happens, but they just drop it into the background, and you're kind of stuck. You're like, what was that? And so you hear Alexis, and it's almost like off the cuff, right? When Lucas Saputo says it, and then so you rewind it, and you're like, Alexis number, and then slowly but surely the gears start turning, right? Because Simone Saputo in that video says, right, this is one of the biggest players to have ever come here, right? So for a split second, I'm like, there's no way, right? and then, you know, slowly but surely you start doing more of your job, and news comes out, and Max Truman broke the story in Montreal that, you know, it's him, it's happening. And so, yeah, it felt almost surreal, because I think while everyone was expecting a designated player to come during this transfer window, I don't think anyone expected something of that magnitude, right? When I was thinking of a designated player, I thought of maybe someone who is younger, coming from Europe, very a la Ivan Jaime, that has the technical qualities needed to really operate in that left wing spot, which is a glaring gap in their squad depth right now. So Alexis Sanchez was, for me, completely out of, I think for everybody, was completely out of left field. And so, again, there's like, you know, I haven't seen Lucas Saputo up until today since the announcement, but he's walking like he's $7 million, right? He's walking like, but again, he's a young guy, and like, he's much more humble than I am, because we've, again, rightfully given him a hard time about this transfer window because of the lack of movement. But if I'm Lucas Saputo, he's stronger, because I'm going up to every journalist. I'm like, how you like them fucking apples, right? Like, so yeah, this is a huge coup, and honestly, he's going to be the poster boy of this rebuild, right? This rebuild that is well underway. You know, if they are in window 3 since the letter, and they said 3 or 4 windows, this is the signing of the rebuild, right? It's not going to get that much bigger than this in terms of name power. So I think it ticks all the boxes. I don't think this team is ready to win the MLS Cup, but definitely now with a healthy Alexis Sanchez, I think this team is a playoff contender.
Robbie disagrees with you as always. He says, Elias. So once
I don't even know what that means anymore. Just says it something.
Okay, so we're all talking about the shock and surprise, shock and awe, if you want, right? Surprise of the move. Okay, but at some point, the dust settles. The shock is over, and you realize, okay, this dude is, he's 37 years old. Like, once that whole part is over, does the signing actually make sense to? I know, Elias, you said about this, the letter and how it fulfills that kind, but does it make sense to you given where CF Montreal is at now and where they want to go to? David, how do you see that?
So I will say yes, but that's not a great thing. I think what I would say is I don't really know where CF Montreal is going. So there's not really a bad day to sign Alexis Sanchez, because he's a big name. He'll get people excited. And CF Montreal haven't built anything in which he gets in the way. So the reason normally I'd say, oh, I don't like this move is because the next Ismael Kone, if he's going to be in front of him, well, I'd rather play that young player and have the future. Because Elias, you talk about a rebuild, he'll be 38 in December. So there's only so much time that Alexis Sanchez has to be a part of this group. But Montreal hasn't really built a ton of that to feel that way. And I don't know that Montreal has a distinct style that he does or doesn't fit, right? They are like dead middle of the road in Major League Soccer when it comes to most stats, whether it's possession, whether it's transition, whether it's expected goals against, right? It's 19-16. Like, that's where Montreal sits. So there's nothing really there to say he does or doesn't fit with. And I think if you want Alexis Sanchez to lead your style, that's okay, because he is a big name player and he has a distinct set of, physical abilities that he can bring to the team. But there's not like a ton here that you're trying to figure out if it pieces together with. I think in the end, this is pure talent, and you'd rather have Alexis Sanchez on this team than not. But it doesn't feel like there's an obvious other option it would have gone. It didn't feel like it was Alexis Sanchez versus X other player who maybe fits better. It felt like they took a gamble and went and took a shot on a big name guy who was available, and they were able to get it done.
Elias, once the dust settled, the shock is over. Does Alexis Sanchez make sense for CF Montreal and its rebuild?
Ça sent la coupe, man.
Ça sent la
No,
coupe.
no. Look, David has a lot of good points because when you're the poster child of the rebuild, it does not necessarily mean that you get to reap the benefits, right? Once the rebuild is complete, you're kind of there to almost reignite the passion for the city, at least from the non-diehards, to bring the name back up to some level of notoriety within the city and within the league, and then also have all these young players that are in attacking positions. You look at Noah Streit, you look at Hennedy Sinchuk, you look at Jorge Escobar. These are all guys that are under 23 that are either wingers or inside forwards, very similar to areas on the field that Alexis Sanchez is going to be operating. And the ability to learn from someone like that is invaluable. It's incredible to kind of be able to, even if it's just for a year, right? And so now you kind of have to find out how he fits into the culture, because Philippe Lafroy has spoken at length about how he does things, and he likes things a certain way. And Alexis Sanchez, if you go back to almost any club he's played for, is a demon in training. Super high intensity, super involved all the time, always working. And he looks like he's in fantastic shape. But again, they're all professional soccer players. They all look like they're in good shape. Let's call a spade here. But, you know.
And he's carved out of stone. He always has.
Exactly. Right. It feels like he gets paid per square inch of like visible thigh, given that it's like low socks and just hiked up Larry Bird size shorts. But like, again, he looks in great shape. Even during some of the higher intensity stuff today, he was moving well. And, you know, he's always been a workhorse his entire career, even at Sevilla, when, you know, I would see him play maybe less than a half dozen games because I follow the Spanish league quite closely. I mostly watch when they were playing either Madrid or Barcelona, but maybe, you know, a couple other games because it is Sevilla. He's still working incredibly hard. He's maybe lost a step in terms of his speed, obviously, but his intelligence is still there, and he's more than quick enough to operate at a high level in MLS. But yeah, you know, you look at his stats, for example, they don't blow you away, but again, this is Spain. If he can translate that into a more creative role, which is what I think is going to be the case, especially when Wiki Carmona is healthy, then, you know, we come back to the real problem, which is other people finishing chances. I don't think Alexis Sanchez is going to be the on-field issue here.
Go ahead, David. Sorry, you want to say something?
No, I was going to say, I think, you know, it's a great point of the young players he can help bring along. But this is sort of my frustration with this Montreal Hope is like, Jorge Escobar has played, 400 minutes this year, 300 minutes? Like, So before Alexis Sanchez got here, some of those guys, and Sinchuk different because he started to get his opportunities, didn't really get their chances. And now you're not going to give them a ton of minutes because you want Alexis Sanchez to be on the field. And you're in more of a win now mode. So it is him and Prince Owusu. And I assume they're going to try and find ways potentially either to get a second forward on the field to be able to start to either put in some of those crosses, or you bring Alexis Sanchez inside and you play him, whether it's that 4-3-3 or whatever it is, as a number 10, then that starts to pull minutes. Is it, you know, one of the younger center midfield options who falls off the field and starts to lose minutes? I think those are the decisions they have to make now as a group. But you'd rather have him than not.
Yeah. I mean, Philippe Lafroy kind of said it last week that Sanchez is going to be starting off on the left because Wiki Carmona is not 100% healthy. Yeah. But he kind of alluded to the fact that once Wiki Carmona is healthy, Hennedy Sinchuk has been playing fairly well. Wiki Carmona at the beginning of the season looked like the steal of the season with what they traded to get him. And Alexis Sanchez could very well be playing in a more central role if you have Wiki Carmona out wide, or vice versa, if you want to play Wiki Carmona in the midfield. But he did allude to the fact that the formation itself could change, because at some point you need to start throwing more bodies forward, and you have a lot.
It would be Daniel Rios, right? It would be Daniel Rios alongside Owusu, where now you have two finishers on the field. Which could be interesting. I like the look of Loturi.
You don't have more finishers. You have more strikers, maybe, but not necessarily finishers.
Not finishers, okay? No. Let's get that straight.
I don't know if you watched the game on Saturday. I wouldn't call it finishers. I'd call it strikers.
No, honestly, like David, I was at practice at CF Montreal practice maybe a week ago before the whole Alexis Sanchez thing was, and they had a finishing drill. I said this on the pod last week. They had a finishing drill where literally all the forwards, Rios, Sinchuk, Streit, Owusu were all there, and it was just finishing. And I was like, somebody's gonna score. Somebody's gonna score. Somebody, and they kept hitting the post. The goalie blocked it. It was out of bounds, and I was like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Next one is nothing. They didn't score, and I was like, it's a practice. Maybe they'll get better. Come game time, same thing. So I'm like, okay, there is an issue here. They need a killer. Maybe I'm using the wrong word, but they need someone with the killer instinct to score, because they are clearly players that lack confidence and do not, don't trust their shot. So it's something that I don't know if Alexis Sanchez, as I mentioned, is going to be the difference maker in that aspect, but hopefully he can put him in a position where it's like very, very obvious. Now, I do want to talk about something, because David, you mentioned about the youngsters like Escobar, Sinchuk, and all that. So before the whole Alexis Sanchez thing, where they said, okay, we're going to get a veteran experience and all that, what they would do is they would sign these young players that we mentioned, and they would give them the most amount of minutes they could.
Yeah.
Hoping that they're going to learn and it's going to click. With Sinchuk, it took a minute, but it did click. And obviously it's not a finished product. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's decent now as opposed to how it was a year ago.
Yeah.
Now they're doing the same thing with Streit. Streit is messy to look at right now. It's very, very bad. Escobar, but they're still with Streit, they're still trying to see if he's going to improve. Escobar, though, has had his chances and he has not improved at all. So now that's a very worrisome case. So it's interesting the transition from this, give the youngsters all the amount of minutes, to, like, as you mentioned, the win now, right?
And I think one of my frustrations with the club has been that as much as you can like playing young players and believe in them, you need to give them structure and like guidance when they step on the field. You cannot play 11 players. The worst example of this, actually, funny enough, was I used to call some of the FC Montreal games when they were the USL championship team Philippe Ulefoy managed, and they would roll out 18-year-olds who would get slaughtered every week. And they're like, well, we believe in youth development. And it's like, they're not learning anything. So they're not accomplishing anything because there's no help. And I think last year that was part of the issues. That's why Brian Vera was the most important move of the offseason, because Efrain Morales and Jalen Neal and guys like that were put in terrible situations, and they had no guidance. They had no support. When they made mistakes, it became avalanches, and you do need senior structures around it. So I don't mind making those moves at all. And I think Danny Pereira is going to be one of those for a while, and that's the idea behind a move like that. And I understood Vera, and I think Ceballos was a good pickup as well if he was available. But I don't mind that part at all, because I think for young players, for Nolger Escobar, so much of the game's on your shoulders, and you're not ready for that. So you need someone to draw attention so that you can do your job and it can be slightly successful. And then you need someone to support you sometimes. And that, to me, is the key, where we've seen the Philadelphia Union fail at this, right? Look at over the last few years, the down years they've had. We've seen FC Dallas fail at this. We've seen the New York Red Bulls fail at this, like right now, where they don't support young, good players enough for them to also be successful. And be successful is not just win a championship, but it is learning how to play the right way so that you can get better.
Exactly. And now I want to know, because we did talk a little bit about Alexis Sanchez and what he could potentially do with a lot of these youngsters. Is Alexis Sanchez, at his age, with his pedigree, with everything he's done so far, is he CF Montreal's best player automatically in this squad? Or do you guys still think he has to prove himself in this league with this squad?
I need to see Alexis Sanchez start multiple games and see what his legs look like and who he is. But my guess is yes. I think I've come around enough times on this with a lot of these players that have come into MLS. You know, Thomas Mueller, Robert Lewandowski now. You look at some of the other guys who have come in. There is a quality of player that, whether it's the same thing they've always done, is not always true. Like I always talk about, Rooney was like a number 10 for DC United a ton of the time, but he's a soccer genius. So he figures that out, and he couldn't run and stretch the field, but he could still affect the game. I think overall we'll see most games. It will feel like Alexis Sanchez is the driving force of the team.
Elias, what do you think he's the best player of this CF Montreal squad, not even having kicked the ball for the team yet.
Yeah. And again, it's not just because of what he was able to do in it throughout his career and how well he's been able to adapt to wildly different leagues basically immediately, right? Going from La Liga to England to Serie A to Ligue 1, back to Serie A, back to La Liga, and never really missing a beat. You know, he understands how to really kind of get into a groove with a team quickly. And, you know, Prince Wusu's been fantastic. Brian Vera's been fantastic. But there's glaring holes in both of their games. And Alexis Sanchez is the best player on the field. It's just a fact, right? Whether or not he plays the best is an entirely different story that needs to kind of be, like David said, right, looked at not just in training, but also how he connects and how, right? Ivan Jaime was the best player on the team, but you don't jive with Prince Wusu, it's not working. So we'll have to see how Alexis Sanchez blends in with Prince Wusu. Prince Wusu is, you know, is one of the first names on the team sheet. He's your leading scorer. He's your leading assister. So I think, you know, his connection with Wusu is the most important thing. They spent a lot of time close together in training today. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they're basically inseparable for most of the possession and game situation drills for the first few weeks of training.
Now, we're talking about the field, the tactics, the players, and all that. But I want to know, Alexis Sanchez is a name. So he's clearly going to drive ticket prices. Ticket purchases. The Stade Saputo was already a little bit fuller. He didn't even play. But people already went just to see him in the stands on Saturday. And they paid a ticket. I was saying last week in the show, guys, that I was talking to one of my colleagues a few days after he signed. And I told him, Alexis Sanchez is coming to Montreal. And he said, oh, I'm going to buy a ticket to watch him. I'm not going to, I don't care if they win or they lose or they suck or they're good. I want to see Alexis Sanchez, even if he's on the bench. So it's inevitable, his impact off the field. Now, David, as I mentioned earlier, we do want to hear a little bit of the perspective league-wise, right? So when the MLS reacts to this kind of signature, you mentioned Robert Lewandowski, Thomas Mueller, we can even talk about Marco Reus or whatnot. But what was the pulse like? What was the reaction around the league? How are teams reacting to maybe when this signing and saying, holy smokes, CF Montreal is back? Well,
I think it's a little different because though a lot of the ones you named were teams that are pushing for a championship, and the reaction is, okay, how does this piece fit in, right? Thomas Mueller goes to a Vancouver team that had already been to a CONCACAF Champions League final that year, and Robert Lewandowski replaces the Golden Boot leader and a team that's top four, where Montreal's in a different space. Now, Montreal, for every team that's playing them, the poster when they come to play is going to be Alexis Sanchez. The broadcast is going to be the RBC Wealth Management player of the game to watch, you know, Lowe's, whatever. And it's going to be Alexis Sanchez. So that, I think, is the reaction, is he has now assumed the identity of CF Montreal. And I think that's an okay thing because Nacho Piatti held that for a while. Didier Drogba has held that in the past. Nancy, I think, held it for a little while on his own. I think that becomes the identity of this club to other people around Major League Soccer. And on the side of coming to see him play, we just said this weekend. Nashville hosted Inter Miami, and everyone came to see Messi. And then Nashville played well. And now people are saying, oh, I'll go back. I'll go watch that. So this is for Montreal. This is your chance to put the rest of the product on display, right? This is your entry ticket to get people in the door. And now you need to hold them.
And that's something that I think is so important. I mean, it's such a little thing that you say like that ticket entry, because Stade Saputo, and Elias, you go to every game, most games at Stade Saputo, and you've seen it. We've seen it together. It's become like a shadow of what it used to be when we're talking about the Ignacio Piatti days or the Didier Drogba days, where it's no longer scary for teams to go play there. So how important is Alexis Sanchez addition to CF Montreal outside of the field with marketing and all that stuff?
I don't think it's going to add more ambiance. I still think that pound for pound, Montreal has one of the best home atmospheres in MLS.
Agreed.
It's just that you're bringing more butts in seats. What you're doing now is hopefully this is what's going to create in 1 or 2 or 3 more years more hardcore fans. But for the rest of the season, the atmosphere itself of the stadium, outside of a goal or a big chance, won't really change all that much. The supporter sections are still the supporter sections, and those will be full. But the hardcore fans have been there, rain or shine. You know, they've been there through 5 win seasons, and so you know that won't chanch.
5-1 against Toronto FC.
Yeah, there's a couple of those, but you know what will change is more people in the stadium, and again, right, kind of like Alexis Sanchez maybe not being able to see the fruits of his labor in terms of this rebuild. He may not also see the fruits of his labor in terms of a more dynamic and engaged casual crowd around the club. But the hardcore fans are obviously loving this, and they're obviously going to have the chants and have everything. He is a Marseille player. A lot of the chants from the supporter section in Montreal are inspired by Marseille's chants to begin with. So I'm sure that they're gonna find some kind of marriage there. And again, right now it's just about being able to get people off their seats and also bring in wins, right? Because that game on Saturday against DC was by far their best game of the season and their best game under Philippe Lafroy. But you go home with a 1-1 draw. So people might have said, yeah, I saw a really entertaining soccer game. I saw a lot of really great creative football. But they didn't win. Yeah. And now they had a chance. That was a 6-point game to kind of claw back some of the gap in the playoff race. And no, they're still 7 points back. So maybe some people will come back. Some people won't. That's for sure.
You want to add something, David, there?
No. I will say I've been to Decision Day. I've been to playoff games. I've been to Canadian Classiques. I think Stade Saputo is as good an atmosphere in Major League Soccer as there is. It's one of the reasons that I have frustration with the ownership group, because I feel like when you build it, the fans come. There are markets in Major League Soccer where it doesn't matter what you build. The building's not going to be filled. It's not going to feel real. Like, there are teams that struggle for relevance, and the Colorado Rapids have hosted conference playoff games that didn't feel as intense as me going to the opening game of the playoffs in Montreal. So that's one of the reasons that's frustrating for me. But I don't find it hard to believe that Alexis Sanchez is going to help grow some of that. And if this team is competitive, it feels like the city comes out for them. The welcome that he got, which similar Drogba got, right? When Drogba landed at the airport, whatever it was, a decade ago at this point, that doesn't happen. Like, it happens for Son because he is like an alien in terms of being South Korean and in LA and all that stuff. And he's one of the greatest Premier League players of all time. That didn't happen for Lewandowski. Like, think about this. This is a Polish international, the Polish international, going to Chicago. Legend. He doesn't get met at the airport like this. Like, there is real soccer fans in Montreal. And the team doesn't have to be the number 1 seed to tap into them. They just need to be competitive and entertaining week in and week out. And you can do that from the middle of the standings, but you have to attempt to do that. And that's, I think, the hope with Alexis Sanchez is if they convinced him, that means they said we're committed to trying to put together a competitive team. And the hope is now they have to deliver on that.
And also I want to add on to that, because you mentioned how, and I'm not taking shot at other cities or all that. Everybody has their own fan base. But something I will say about at least Montreal fans, the more time passes, the more the city becomes a soccer city. It's the people that understand the sport and the importance of going to City Hall and making your voice heard. You had the mayor of Montreal yelling the chi, lele. Like, that's huge, because all of a sudden, City Hall is in the middle of Old Port. You guys know this. And you have random people that have never heard of soccer, don't know nothing, tourists as well, that are seeing people going bananas. And they're like, what's happening right now? Oh, there's a new soccer player that just signed for the Montreal soccer team. Oh, who? Alexis Sanchez. Oh, I know that name. Oh, can I go see him watch this weekend? Yeah, go. Okay, so stuff like that, where it's people are starting to understand soccer. And like you mentioned, Elias, it's one of those stats of puro, and you guys have been there, we've all been there. If you just take a millisecond in the middle of the game to just enjoy what's happening around you, you realize this is special. This is different where I'm at right now. Like what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, the distance of the players and all that. But we have, I know we're taking up way too much time of David's time. So we're going to just finish off with a few questions here. So as I mentioned, Alexis Sanchez is signing for until the end of this season and then the sprint season with the option. Now, I want to hear you guys take on, looking forward, which is very hard to do right now, but looking forward, what would you guys consider Alexis Sanchez's tenure with CF Montreal, regardless how long it lasts, a successful one for the club and for him?
I would say one playoff appearance for sure. I think we're probably going to be in a race against time this year for him to come out of technically preseason for himself, to get up to full speed, and the team already being 7-8 points behind the playoff line and having to chase. So if you told me they made one playoff appearance, aka probably next year, and the sprint season, assume that's 17 games. He's got 14, 15 games left this season, plus some other comps. I think if he can start like 20 games and be the center force of the team when he's on the field, where you feel him and he impacts it, I think that's good enough. Like, I don't have hard goal assist numbers that he has to hit, but I think he has to be on the field and performing for them. Because if it's, the Wanyama thing, I was going to say Victor Wembanyama because I've been watching Nick's highlights all day. If it's the Wanyama thing where it's like, where is he? Like, does anyone know where he is? Is he at training? Is he not? If it's that at some point, I think then that's going to be a huge letdown. So as long as he is a consistent piece of the team, I think they'll be happy.
Elias, what would be a successful tenure for Alexis Sanchez at Montreal?
For at least for this season, at the very least, going into decision day, not eliminated. I think that if they can claw back to within striking distance from 7 points back in a dozen games left, that'll be a win. Especially because the rest of their schedule is very unforgiving. If you look at globally, right, his entire contract, which is the next 12 months, again, it's a bit more, qualitative rather than quantitative. It's bringing back the notoriety of the club, filling up the stadium, right? The stadium is on average like 2/3, 3/4 full this season. Bring it to 80+% every single game. Be competitive. And next year, make the playoffs without having to go to decision day. That's my goal, right? Because like David said, right, Alexis Sanchez, in terms of giving him hard numbers at 37, 38, is not productive. It's how do you bring him in to improve everyone around you? And how do you bring him in to also maybe draw in some bigger names, some bigger free agents, and improve the squad from that perspective? Because, again, the allure of playing with someone like Alexis Sanchez is not nothing. So using that tool as well to help improve the squad will be nice, but that only happens if they make the playoffs next year comfortably. I think that would be successful. Everything else is gravy, and hey, maybe a Canadian championship. I don't want to be too greedy, but a Canadian championship would be nice.
Honestly, all those words sound so nice right now. I just want to continue hearing them. But but because he hasn't kicked the ball yet, we can't say anything.
Yes, he has. he
did today. But look, what I consider Alexis Sanchez's success would be, like you mentioned, David, him playing. But more than anything, I want him to create a pipeline, not by himself. That's why I said for the club too. Create a pipeline of talent, of people that are like, I want to practice with Alexis Sanchez every single day and learn from him. It doesn't have to be Chileans. It has to be players that aspire to playing for a legend like Alexis, with a legend like Alexis Sanchez. So hopefully, and he can set the standard for the club to make Alexis Sanchez feel welcome and comfortable in the city of Montreal, so he can talk to these connections or young kids or talent or whatever. Say, hey, at Montreal, it's nice because they love hockey so much in this city that you can walk around downtown and they won't recognize you. So hopefully that's the kind of standard they can say. Okay, last question before we go. Okay, before we let David go, does Alexis Sanchez give Montreal a legitimate shot at the playoffs this season, or is this squad still missing too many pieces to even consider that a probability?
I don't think it's a quality problem at this point. I think if he's the player we think he's going to be, and that's not 2014 Alexis Sanchez, but still 2026 Alexis Sanchez, I think there'll be enough in this group. I just think it's too much to overcome. I think when you look at what Columbus has done and Orlando has done, so those are the teams sitting between you and a playoff spot. They're Open Cup semifinalists. They are Leagues Cup quarterfinalists because they've made big moves. They've fired coaches. They've done stuff as well. I just think there's too many teams to jump over. And with the way DC United's playing now, I think what Elias said is possible. They could be within 3 points touching distance if this happens on the final day. They've got a shot at 8th or 9th. But I just think there's too many teams you have to jump over at this point of the season. And I didn't even talk about Philly, who are like the best team in the league right now all of a sudden.
Robbie agrees with you. He says, you are correct, sir. So, but yeah, Elias, did you just want to give your take real quick before we let David go?
I mean, anyone who's covered this league, especially the Eastern Conference, knows that in the last 10 games, teams between 8th and 14th forget that they're in a playoff race. And they just give every single opportunity possible for teams to catch them and teams to overtake them. And it becomes like, it becomes the Hunger Games. It's a mess. Points are dropped left, right, and center when they shouldn't be. And, you know, Saturday was exactly that case where Montreal should have won. They didn't. And, you know, every team in front of Montreal, except for Toronto, dropped points that day. So, you know, that is the Eastern Conference play-in race. That's in a nutshell. So is it possible? Yeah, stupider things have happened. Is it likely? Absolutely not. And yeah, you know, I think they left it a little bit too late. And one of our biggest complaints 2 weeks ago on the pod was that they waited too long to make any moves in the transfer market. Because if Alexis Sanchez had come 2 weeks earlier and helps you get a point against Toronto, it helps you get a point against Nashville, or extra 2 points, sorry, and one of those games, instead of settling for draws or losing, then it's an entirely different conversation. But with where we're at now, it's a lot.
The other piece that's tough just with a World Cup year and obviously with stupid Leagues Cup added in and all this type of stuff is you have a ton of midweeks. So again, 37-year-old, and you have to remember, and this is the part that will be great next year, but isn't now, he's coming out of preseason. So how quickly are you going to accelerate him through? What are his minutes limits across a full week? What's the load that he can sort of carry for them? And you have him on the deal for next sprint season. So it's not just let's run him into the wall and then it's not our problem. I think this is built towards cresting at the sprint season. So you want to make sure you take care of him.
And just before I let you go, David, how are you dealing with that World Cup hangover right now? Because I'm not asking Elias because I know exactly where we're at, the two of us. Right. How are you feeling it right now?
It's sad. It's the coolest thing that any of us live around. And you're watching the most important soccer game to people in their lives, 4 times a day, and you could connect with them about it and hang out with them. We were doing a daily live show, which is one of the most fun things I've ever done. I was lucky enough to go to 2 games, but that wasn't even the best part. Just like going to bars and watching with people and chatting with the people who I consider friends about soccer was so much fun. And the whole world's doing one thing. So it's the coolest thing that ever happens. I'm sad it's gone. And I keep talking about it as if it's still a relevant thing to the world. It's like, well, in the World Cup, I learned, I was talking to someone about Man City today, and I was like, well, Man City players suck for their national teams. And they're like, well, that doesn't really matter because we're talking about the Premier League. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, for sure. So I'm recovering, I guess I would say.
Yeah, we all are, man. I don't know if you hear me, my voice cracking while I say it's because I don't want to cry. Yeah. But David, thank you so much for joining us. Please tell the good people where they can find you for everything MLS and other things and other stuff.
Yeah, soccer-wise. So we have 5 shows a week. We are covering MLS at least twice a week. We cover NWSL as well. So we do that every Tuesday. We have U.S. national team specials, but then we also have some specials interviews. We're launching our first of a new interview show we're going to do every Friday this week with Vanni Sartini, who's coaching the Halifax Wanderers right now. And he coached the Vancouver Whitecaps. Amazing conversation with him about, so he was a coaching instructor when he came. He learned it in Italy while coaching in Serie B, and then he came to the US to teach that, and then he took over in Vancouver. So he has really deep knowledge on youth development, coaching development, soccer culture, the growth of the game in Canada and the US. So I'm really excited for that one, and we're going to be doing more like that over the coming weeks. So yeah, we're on every day of the week. We've got our international show, First Touch, that covers Champions League, Copa Libertadores, Premier League, international soccer, all of the things as well. So we're your one-stop shop for everything non-Montreal that you want in the soccer.
Montreal is us. No, leave
Never
that
a
to
dull
us,
moment.
man. Come on.
You
man.
guys are the experts.
Give us something. But you know what? It's funny that you mentioned NWSL because we do. The Roses have 2 players now that have come from the NWSL, Elise Bennett and Mimi Alidou, who are.
Ali too played well for Portland last year. Yeah. She's a really good player.
Oh, she's fantastic.
We're excited.
We love her in Canada. We know her very well. So
yeah,
and she's already proving that
different,
super important.
Yeah. She's a high level player.
Yeah. Well,
David, we'll have to have you up here for Rose's Super Wombo combo
would love
Montreal weekend. You know,
let's do it. Let's do all 3 in one weekend. I want to go to that stadium that. Was it Laval that plays there?
Wait for them to change the turf, David. Don't get too excited. Yeah. Wait for them to change the turf because it is not impressive. David, thank you so much again for joining us. It was a pleasure and giving us, your insight on everything MLS. And hopefully next time we're talking it's another big player signing and not a coach getting fired because it seems like it's either this or that. So
somewhere in the 2 extremes, let's stay on the positive side of things.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks, David. And
all right, talk to you guys later.
Bye. All right. Well, before we move on to our next topic, go ahead, Elias.
Yeah. Look, we still got a lot of CF Montreal stuff to cover, but before we get into Saturday's game against DC United, there was some off-field news worth talking about. CF Montreal and the league conducted an investigation into, alleged remarks of anti-Semitism. There were no drums, no flares, no flags, no bell ringing in that game. 2 fans whose names were not made public received indefinite bans from the stadium, and in addition, the responsible supporters group received an indefinite restriction on the privileges that I just mentioned in terms of smoke, flags, and drums. There's been a lot of responses. One of the more concise ones is from 132 Crew. I'm going to read a few guys here. Rather be IDS than IDF. Free Palestine. The 132 Crew is anti-racist, anti-fascist, and anti-Zionist. We denounce the violence of the state of Israel, anti-Semitism. Our values, we carry them in our lives, just like in our stands. So now they go on to talk about the facts of what happened. At the 36th minute of the August 1st match against the New England Revolution, Dor Turjaman came to celebrate his goal in front of our section after taunting us earlier in the game. We responded with chants of Free Palestine. That's it. No hate, no threats, a slogan of solidarity. Now they get into the fabrication, or what they allege is to be the fabrication. Since then, media outlets, groups, companies, and individuals have blindly spread fabricated news about a chant that never existed. Supporters, the club, the city are being accused of anti-Semitism based on baseless rumors. Yet, on August 7th, 2026, the Impact de Montréal's management confirmed to us in a meeting that their internal investigation proved what we already knew. No anti-Semitic chant was heard in the stands during that match. The conclusion, despite this, the league sanctioned our section under media pressure. We're asking publicly, sanctioned for what exactly? Based on what recordings, what testimonies, what evidence? A sanction handed down on evidence that was never shared with us. This is not a disciplinary decision. It's a public lynching. The league didn't judge the facts. It's protecting its image on our backs. What we now demand is the following. Firstly, that the league make public the evidence its decision is based on. Secondly, that the league explain why the supporters targeted by this section were never consulted during its investigation. And thirdly, that the organizations, medias, and groups that have accused us of chanting death to Israel retract those statements. The investigation proved that those chants never happened. Finally, the 132 Crew flat out rejects the label that they tried to stick on Montreal stands. We will not apologize for a chant that never happened, and a smear campaign will not silence a section that carries inclusive and anti-racist ideas in Montreal and across the league. Criticizing a genocidal state and its army and its war crimes is not hating a people. Free Palestine from the river to the sea. So I think in this statement, they're basically coming forward and saying that one of the members of their support, or the members of that were banned or accused of these remarks, come from their supporters group. So this statement, I mean, a lot of the reporting that came out was contradictory to begin with, and it was based mostly on word of mouth and not much visual evidence. Again, when there's a goal and a lot of people are yelling, it's kind of hard to kind of isolate individual words being said, but I kind of saw this coming. I don't know about you, Andy. The second this happened, and the second I saw that the next home game that Montreal was playing was against DC United, who have another Israeli player in Ty Baribo, who scored, because of course he was going to score.
Yeah,
I knew that something was going to happen before the game. So, like, there's no way that they were going to have another Israeli player come to Satsaputo after the media circus that had happened, and nothing was going to happen. So what was your kind of impression after they at least that the club announced that, these penalties were being inflicted?
Look, I'm going to say one thing, just in general. I absolutely hate it when politics gets mixed into sports. I'm not saying that just because I hate it, it shouldn't happen. I mean, it is a platform to voice your opinion and all that. Obviously, it's he said, she said, and all that. If it's true what the statement that the supporters group said, and I believe him, I believe anybody that puts out a statement, it's sad, because I think for the sake of transparency and the sake of understanding, maybe they are wrong, maybe they are right, we don't know, but we won't know until these things are made public, right, as they mentioned. So I will say this not just about these chants or I'll say it in general. I don't, not guilty to proving guilty, right, in the sense that if there is evidence, if they are so sure about what this decision that they're making to the point that they cannot appeal it, then show us that evidence, show them that evidence, so that everybody's happy from their side and can accept their punishment. Therefore, we don't have, again, Elias, you know this, since the rebranding of this club, there's been a big back and forth of she said, he said, she said, he said, pointing fingers, they did this and they did that, they promised this and that, Joey Saputo said, and it adds on another layer to that argument, that disconnect between the supporters group and the club. And it's just, to me, an unfortunate event. I hope it gets resolved quickly, because at the end of the day, what we do here is we talk about the sport, and because we love the sport, and mixing politics and sports is never good for anyone involved, the athletes, the club, or the supporters, fans. So I really hope this gets resolved as quickly as possible, and the club and the league can be as transparent as possible, so everybody can make their own judgment if they want.
Look, sport, whether you like it or not, sports and politics have gone hand in hand forever, since the concept of athletics and sports started. So that's not going to change anytime soon. The supporter section has always been political. There's been the Palestinian flag has been flown in multiple different supporters groups throughout the stadium. And, again, I mentioned it with when David was on. The club, the supporters groups take a lot of inspiration from Marseille. And Marseille, along with AEK, AS Livorno, and a bunch of other Celtic and a bunch of other European clubs, and also South American clubs, are some of the most anti-racist and leftist sporting organizations in the world. So if you're going to be taking inspiration from a club like Marseille, you're going to be tying yourself to a political organization no matter what. And look, I love my supporters groups with a little bit of political messaging, because that's just the truth, especially with regards to soccer. It's an incredibly political sport. I actually have a really cool article I wrote about that.
Get it.
So yeah, a little self promo. Okay. But look, politics and sports will always
link in bio if you want. Go ahead. Sorry,
I don't even know where it's linked. It's when I used to write for the Link newspaper. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah.
But look, sports and politics have gone hand in hand forever.
Yeah.
It's something that I think is incredibly important and incredibly necessary, because we've seen sports be used for evil. We talked about it on the pod, where sports can be used to kind of hide genocidal regimes, tyrants, bad faith political actors, all this kind of stuff. Those people use sports to make themselves appear better. They use the World Cup and many other international tournaments and sporting events, entertainment events to make themselves paint in a better light. I don't see why the shoe cannot be on the other foot. It's just a reality. However, we're also a soccer podcast.
Yes.
We have games to talk about. Let's get into the first game.
We have a lot of games to talk about.
We've got a lot of games to talk about. Let's get into the first
game. Listen, we'll finish it with this. Look at this. He's already putting up the lineup. Let's go. All right. Yeah, we got shit to do. All right. So, bro, that was an awesome segment having David here.
Yeah, again, thank you. 100% thank you to David Gass.
Legend. David
fucking
Gass.
Consummate professional. Yeah. Didn't swear once. Couldn't be me. And we look forward, like Andy said, we look forward to having him on in less dramatic circumstances. Maybe just for, like a State of the Union and not exactly like my house is on fire kind of stop by.
Rob is just like, be brief, guys. Okay, yeah, all right, thanks, Robbie. We're trying, but you know what? Elias, it's good to have conversation. We have something to talk about. 2 months ago, for 3 clubs, we were talking about, we're like, they lost again. What's next? They lost again. But now we're talking because in the other
now
topic,
only one of them lost. Progress.
Tied. But okay, so quickly, we're going to go over this because we talked about Alexis Sanchez, CF Montreal's lineup to start on because they did play on Saturday. People forget, but they played against DC United. Starting, we had at the left wing Noah Streit, Prince Owusu as the 9, Hennady Sinchuk as the right winger, Fabian Herberts, Danny Pereira, and Victor Latouri as the middle, Luca Petrasso, Brian Vera, Jalen Neal, and Brian Ceballos in the back line with Thomas Gillier as the goalie. The game ended in a 1-1 draw, but the CF Montreal's they haven't lost every game, but they've been winless since May 13th.
Yeah.
You mentioned it when David was here. You believed it was one of their best games of the season. Based on what? Is it just the stats? What is it that you thought you saw?
Dominance, chance creation, defensive control, midfield control, everything, right? Up until the last little bit. And I'm paraphrasing Scotty Bowman. Look how big the fucking net is.
Yeah.
Put it in.
Yeah.
Look, they could have easily won this game 4 or 5-1 easily, and the fact that they didn't even get 3 points, let alone blow DC out of the water, is unacceptable. Again, nobody played badly, but the attackers did not do enough to get 3 points. That's simple as this. Prince Owusu, I think, had his best game under Philippe Rafoy. That includes the hat trick against DC. He was fantastic today. He was combining. He was winning. He was holding up play. He was creating chances. He should have had like 2 assists. He also should have scored. But I think he was fantastic on Saturday. JFL Montreal. I love the debut of Ceballos. I think that he is a very interesting counterpart to David Bugay, who again was not at training.
Wasn't training today?
I don't think so. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I didn't see him at training. Also, like, it was a regen day, so nobody really stood out. But and everyone was looking at someone else. Let's be honest here. But Ceballos was really interesting.
Can I say something real quick? Yeah. When I asked somebody at CF Montreal, I'm not gonna say their name, where's David Bugay? Because I don't think I see him. He was like, that person was like, huh? I was like, where's David Bugay? I don't see him. I don't know. And I said, there's a bear. I was like, okay.
Would you look at that? He's not there.
I was like, any explanation? Didn't even know he was not here. I was like, okay. All right. Thank you for everything. Anyways, go on. Sorry.
But yeah, Ceballos, I mean, I don't know what you think about Ceballos, but I think he's a very interesting, very different player from Bugay. I loved what he brought. He has this kind of incisiveness and maybe this little bit of, unpredictability that really kind of added a lot of dynamic play to the right side. I'd love to see him combine with Hennady Sinchuk more and see how that works, because I think David Bugay and Hennady Sinchuk have built a really good rapport together and they're combining well. Brian Ceballos is a very different kind of player.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see how that translates, because again, right, between Danny Pereira and Brian Ceballos, this is another window where they do a fantastic bit of MLS business. Because Danny Pereira, in home games, wow. Says Fabregas said it best when one of the most underrated elements of a midfielder, especially a pivot or a tempo controlling midfielder, is his accelerations, is his little 2 or 3 or 4 meter sprints that create separation or that help you kind of close down space. And he was doing that all game. He was closing the ball down. Him, Loturi, and Herbers ran over the entire DC midfield. It was not even close. It was super impressive. I think Danny Pereira might bench Sampiet. Different player, completely different player. Mm-hmm. But I think with what Philippe Raffin wants in terms of in possession, I think he might sit him down. Especially if Mona comes back and plays in the 8.
But I don't know if it's necessarily because Daniel Pereira is better than Samuel Piet. I think it's been a minute that he's been needing to be benched just because he's just not that kind of player anymore for CF Montreal. And I think it's very clear for everybody. But I mean, CF Montreal has been so bad the past few months, and we've already talked about it over and over in every pod, that Samuel Piet, you kind of didn't have an option because you didn't have any other decent midfielder that could do his job. Now you do. As far as Brian Ceballos, I mean, I need a few more games. I don't know. It's there were moments where I was kind of impressed, but there were also moments where I was like, well, his first touch is okay. Like I expected a little bit more from him because I know how good David Bugay can be. But at the same time, it's just I think that was his first game, if I'm not wrong, right? That was for Brian Ceballos.
His first start,
So, I mean, it's not a bad game. It's not something that I can look at and say he was terrible. But offensively, I guess maybe I was a little bit expecting a little more from him. Maybe it'll come with time. Maybe it's the dynamic with his teammates and all that. But he's an interesting profile definitely to look at, especially the dynamic he builds with Jalen Neal, who I personally loved. And we're going to do it quickly.
So much, man. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
The Neal Vera combo is, simply put, unless someone is hurt, they cannot stop playing next to each other.
Yeah,
they have to start.
He's a very interesting because you almost see him and you think, oh, he's just a lanky kid that is tall, but the way he positions his body, something we used to see with George Campbell, the way he had obviously a bigger body, he just positions himself in a way that especially in the high line, it really disturbs the DC United attackers, and I felt like he shut down his side against DC United. He was actually my top. I was going to talk about that. We can go right into it.
Go for it. Yeah, top and top.
My top was Jayden Neal because, again, after being kind of having a lot of mistakes, being questionable for a lot of things, and also very injury prone, he's actually shown me that he's capable of holding his ground and holding his, shutting down a side. We haven't seen a center back do that in a minute since George Campbell left, really shutting down a side. So that's fantastic. As you mentioned, Brian Vera and him together, both we already know what Brian Vera can do, but I thought he was great, Jayden Neal. Yeah. My flop, though, and I mentioned it when David was here, is Noah Stripe, man. I don't know, man. We need a left winger to replace him badly.
I get it
it's not because he's bad.
He played that badly.
No, he played really bad. Like he was. I was looking at the stats yesterday. He was, I think, 1 out of 6 in crosses. Like, and it's just a lot of times there's like two or three runs where he literally overthinks it or holds on to a ball too much, doesn't know what to do, and trips over himself. It's not because he's bad. He's not a bad player. I think he's got a lot to, but he's showing us a Hennady Sinchuk 2025 where was insecure, was not sure what to do, which side to go, what was his role. And it's not a pretty sight right now. And that's why, to me, he's a flop. Again, high hopes. I think he has the tools. He's a very, very fast player. And
has player on the team.
Has a very interesting one touch with when he understands each other with teammates. But it's just not there yet. I want to maybe see him get 30 minutes every game, but have somebody else be a starter and let him develop that confidence little by little by being more impactful in those few minutes he gets. Because right now, it's rough to see. And Luca Petrasso is having a hell of a season right now, in my opinion.
He's playing really well.
he's found the way to cross ball. Anyways, Elias, just finish it off with your top and flop of the game, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. My top is, look, I wanna. We've talked about how great Prince Wusu is. He's again another really good game from him. I want to give the credit to Dani Pereira, because fantastic. Honestly, what he brings to midfield, we've been begging for it for, honestly, ever since Nathan Saliba left. We've been begging for someone who knows how to kind of control the game, control the midfield, and operate at will. He's less of a physical presence, maybe, but he's quick, he's determined, he works incredibly hard, and his vision is fantastic with and without the ball. He sees the game, but he also sees threats before they even materialize, and he closed down space really well. He was one of the main reasons that DC basically got no progress through the middle of the park. He was one of the main reasons. I think he also makes Victor Latour's life a lot easier, because it just lets Latour run and cover ground and disrupt, which is what's best. And Latour has to worry less about dictating pace and controlling it, because the few times that Latour got the ball and was able to drive into space, he looked really good.
Yeah.
But again, like that's because Dani Pereira kind of liberates the ball playing aspect. So I love, and also I'm going to shout out all three starting midfielders, because Fabian Herbers in his first start in a hot minute was also really good in the midfield. I think that he was combining well. I don't have a flop. I agree with you that I think Noah Strait from the starters at least probably had the weakest game, but I liked what I saw from him in spurts. I don't want to give him a flop necessarily, because I still think it was probably one of his better games, which is saying a lot. Oof. But he was getting into good spots. He was taking people on one-on-one. And you know who he reminds me a lot of is early to mid-season Dante Sealy, where, again, less impactful, but it's more the willingness to go forward, the willingness to take people on, get into really, really uncomfortable spaces, ask questions of defenders, and the speed to get in behind. So obviously that final touch is not there. He can't hit a free kick like Dante Sealy and stuff like that, or a dead ball. But I do see, from a mental side, I see a lot of that from Dante Sealy into Noah Strait. So again, if he comes anywhere near the kind of production we saw from Dante Sealy at the end of the season at any point in his time in Montreal, it's a massive success. But I think at least for the start, it's a bit difficult. JFL saying, I think he should play on the right to cross the ball into Prince. I understand that, but Sinchuk has been so good on the right that I feel like putting him anywhere else right now, that's what Donadel tried. He tried playing him as a 10, and he would just end up on the right side anyway. So then, it gets a little bit complicated, but I see why, because he also played on the right in Europe, in Switzerland. So I get it. I just don't know, because you already have, you have Oher Escobar, you have Hennady Sinchuk, and you have Wiki Carmona. I don't know if it fits completely, But I think with Sanchez there and him coming off the bench, you take a lot of pressure off him. I think we'll get at least some more steps forward, I hope.
Yeah, exactly. So that concludes it for the CF Montreal. Now we're obviously going to move on to our next topic. We covered 3 clubs here. We spoke extensively, almost an hour, just about CF Montreal.
It's been a busy Montreal week.
Yeah, Lee, look. Elias doesn't even let me finish my sentence. I was already showing the line.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. Look, but before we look at the lineup, Elias, we have something else to talk about. Okay, so
we do. Oh shit.
The week before this game, massive news.
You are. Oh, the fact that it's only been 3 days, it feels like 50. You're right.
Robert Rasatoyu, Rose's head coach, was fired after that Canadian Championship loss to Simcoe County. Elias, you were at the game. You kind of told us, I think, you told me a little bit about how it was probably one of the worst games. I heard the post-game press conference of him too. He said he wasn't going to talk to the players that night. I don't know. We don't know what was the conversations going on hours before that, hours after that. We don't know. All we know is that the next day we get a notification. He's no longer the coach of Roses FC. Now, I'm going to say one thing before we give our analysis. On behalf of the whole Ball is Round, I do want to just give a quick thank you to Robert Rasatoy, because we've had him on the show. We saw him at practice. We saw him at games. And he's just, as a human being, I'm not talking X's and O's, nothing of that sort. Just as a human being, he's been fantastic with us. He's always been giving us just the nicest guy, and we all believe here at the Ballers Round that he's going to be back in no time with another job, and because we think he's just a fantastic human being, right? But just a big thank you on behalf of the Ballers Round to Robert Rossitoyu. But we do have to talk about it because this is the soccer world, and soccer world hirings and firings go regardless of how we feel about a human being, right? So what were your thoughts when you get that email? And did it make sense? What questions are going through your head at that point?
Well, first off, I was at CF Montreal training with Hattie when I got the email. And, whenever you break news to other people, it's always fun. Whenever you get to break news in a room full of journalists, it's even better. Because there was there's almost a dozen journalists there, because it was also CF Montreal's pre-game media availability. And at that point, the Alexis Sanchez news had broken. So there was just obviously naturally a lot of attention on the club. So the news went off like a bomb, honestly, because everyone stopped watching train. They were like, what? It was a huge surprise. I think everyone was surprised. I think, and we spoke with Marinette Pichon.
Yes.
And, that's the full interview is available on our Patreon for free. Go take a look at that.
Go.
Even the players, seemed shaken by it. A lot of them posted goodbye messages or comments or commented on Robert's post. It's clear that, their performances played a part. And, Marina talked about that as well in the interview, how when you're, at least from her perspective as a player, whenever a coach gets fired, part of it is your fault. It's never just the coach's fault, right? The players can't fire a whole team. Sometimes you just have to fire the coach. And so, look, that is the reality of the sport, right? Not everything's going to be sunshine and roses, no pun intended. And sometimes the reality of the sport is going to hit even teams that are in second place, and even teams where the vibes are really well. We're going really well. So, like you said, Robert has been a consummate professional with us. He's been delightful to talk to, in interviews, but also, in and around the training ground. He's a very intelligent coach, very intelligent tactical mind. He'll bounce back, no problem. And we wish him nothing but the best, and bring on the Marie's interim coach era.
Yeah, well, that's what, like, my next question is like, was it the right move? Was it the right time? What did they jump the gun just to give Marie's a few games to prove herself being a coach, or was it the players' fault? Was it really on Robert? I mean, Robert was, in my opinion, Rossitoyu was doing what the hand he was dealt, right? Like, kind of playing players off position. We can talk about Ambele Riceto, Megan Sauvé playing center back, plenty of other positions. But we talked about in this pod that we felt like the adjustments he had made to the game, to his lineup, were actually decent, were well-made decisions, and they worked out well. Not always wins, but they seemed going in the right direction. Do you think it was a rash decision of Roses to do? Do you think it was the right one? Or was it maybe like a message of a wake-up call to the Roses player, like, hey, the coach is gone, now y'all have to prove yourself to a brand new, blank slate?
Look, I think with you look at the three players they brought in this window. It's Amandine Pierre-Louis, Eve Perissette, and Mimi Alidou. These are not they brought in academy players as well for the development contracts. But if we're talking about like first team players, this is not a team that's looking to rebuild or consolidate. These are three starting players. These are three internationals, and these are three players with serious resumes. That should have been the first wake-up call. That this team does not fuck with complacency at all. You're in second place, and you go out there and you land three huge signings, which means second place is not acceptable. So I think that might have been the first message to warn people about the complacency, and it didn't take, right? Because as well as this team is built, and honestly, the bigger swings that Robert took are the ones that work the best. Megan Sauvé has been fantastic at the left side of center back. And Valérie Seto, who had turned into a center back, has been excellent in her first season. Tanya Boychuk playing at wingback has also been really good. Haley Whitaker playing on her off wing as a wingback, which again is very unconventional for wingbacks, has been playing really well. So all these people that are playing either out of position or in new elements have done quite well for themselves. It's even Lisa Petrsky as a wingback has gone well. I don't think it's gone as well as what was hoped. Maybe she's obviously better as a 10 or as a winger than she is as a wingback, but it's also been okay. I think the real issues here are in people playing in their natural positions. Right? The league is starting to slowly but surely figure out Evelyn Bennett, fantastic. Elise Bennett. It happened to me too. Yes, I know. Fantastic. Elise Bennett. And they're forcing her to kind of create more on her own. And it's highlighting more that she is a player that thrives off of the service she receives. Mimi Aledou is clearly fantastic, but is still learning to play with these players. The chemistry is not all the way there, right? Charlotte Bilbao and Chloe Minas, as well as they started the season, are having a tough time controlling the midfield in the last couple weeks. Even when they went on their little run to kind of regain that form after they slipped up, right? There's certain elements that are not optimal. We talked about professional wins, where they would win even if they didn't play that well. That's cool and all. But if you're a club that's watching this from I'm asking how. I don't care about how many. I want to see how you win. Then I understand the dissatisfaction. And yeah, so I don't pin much of this on Robert. It's always shared blame.
Yeah, and they haven't. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna be adding a coach to replace Maryse Bédard as an assistant coach, because that coaching staff is already very thin with how many assistant coaches they have.
Well, but they're already starting the search now. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
because
Marinette did not confirm to me whether or not Maryse was seeing out the rest of the season, but she is interim, and she made it quite clear without actually saying it that Maryse probably won't be considered for the permanent job. She straight up said Maryse is a very good assistant coach, and she is. Because anyone that goes to CF Montreal, I'm in great form today. I'm in fantastic form. Anyone that's gone to Rose's training knows that Maryse runs her stations and runs her segments like the Navy. She's super organized, super disciplined. Her voice carries and people listen, and she gives great instructions. So she's got a great future ahead of her. I just don't think the club is considering her right now.
It's going to be very
unless something changes.
Yeah,
and then they go on a crazy run, and then
man, if they do and they make it to playoffs and they go very far, and I'm sure Maryse is going to show up to Marinette's office and say, like, "What's up?
You see this?
What's up?"
I mean, like she could pull a Philippe Lafroy, where she's not being considered. She gets the team behind her. The performances improve. Yeah. It's entirely possible, right? And she's more than good enough to do it. So again, that's a post-mortem question.
Yeah,
and not necessarily a right now question.
It starts with the wins, right? So speaking of wins, transition, baby.
Look at that.
So Roses FC had a convincing 2-0 victory over AFC Toronto on Sunday, and we have the lineup up in the screen. At top, we had Elise Bennett, Lisa Petrsky, Mimi Aledou as forwards. Then we have Haley Whitaker on the left, Charlotte Bibeau, Chloe Minas in the middle, with Tanya Boychuk again playing the wing back, Megan Sauvé as the center back, Lucy Capadon in the middle, and Anne-Valérie Seto as the right center back, and Anna Karpenko as the goalie. All right, so again, what are your thoughts on the game? And again, a victory, first time we see them maybe reacting from wait, no, but hold on. I'm going to ask the question. We talked about it in the chat, but now we're going to talk about it in the pod. Did Toronto get robbed? I think they got robbed. I'm sorry.
They didn't get robbed. If it finished 1-0, absolutely, but it didn't. That was not a penalty. Straight up.
Not a penalty. That was not
the foul happened outside the area. The ref didn't call it. Actually, the AR called it. The ref called the foul. The AR communicated that the foul was in the area. Twas not. But look, how many times have the Roses been on the receiving end of some suspect officiating, right? That doesn't excuse the complete blunder that is that call.
And the offsides in the other side, which
it was offside. Here's the thing: the player, I don't know who was in front during that Zadorsky goal. She was in front of Anna Karpenko in an offside position, and even if Karpenko couldn't have gotten to that ball, she obstructed Karpenko in some capacity. She obstructed her view. She obstructed her movement. It's honestly as bad as the call was on that AR for the penalty. Massive congratulations to the AR on the other side for actually spotting that offside call and calling it right away, because that was
yes,
honestly it needed multiple replays for me to see it. I was like, oh my god, got that right away. That's a great call. I don't think Toronto got robbed, but I do think that penalty changed the tone of the game completely, right? And you look at Bennett's goal, which was again a really nice individual effort. Excuse me. That only comes because Toronto sends more numbers forward to try and find an equalizer, and she hits back on the counter. But no, I don't think they were robbed, but they do absolutely have the right to feel hard done.
Yeah, I don't know, man. To me, it was, if I'm a Toronto fan, I'm fuming because
I'm heated. I'm absolutely heated. I'm calling for that ref to be fired.
Yeah, because I mean, if that happens in Stade Boréal, there's so many.
Unacceptable.
But look, it was. I think overall it was a great game by Rose FC. I mean. But this is kind of what I said and kind of said, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, right? Like, okay, well, now Robert Rossatoyo isn't here. Like, what does Maris, the new coach, bring? What ideas? How do we do? Are the players feeling liberated again? I'll be very honest with you, Elias. I've only seen the last game that I saw of Roses was the one before the Canadian Championship and the one after. I never saw that performance of the Canadian Championship. But I've heard people say that it was horrendous, a horrendous performance by Rose FC. So, but what I was trying to see is what was the reaction to the firing and how would they perform? And I felt like they reacted well. They played well. I mean, they won a 2-0 game, but I still don't see them. I still see pieces that are not comfortable in their positions, which is really tough to see, and that they're still adjusting. But we're already getting so close to the tail end of the season that you need them to be comfortable. And or we obviously, there's injuries that are also obviously taking a toll, but there's serious questions for me whether this team is strong enough. And I'm not talking about individual talent like Lisa Pechersky, Elise Bennett. We haven't seen Evelyn Badou in a bit, but just individual.
She should be coming back from AFCON shortly in the next couple of days.
Okay, good. But in any case, I've seen individual performances that went really well, but collectively, I'm still not convinced if this team can make a deep run into the playoffs. I'm not saying qualifying for the playoffs, making a deep run into the playoffs. Edgar's joining us from Los Angeles. Thank you, Edgar, so much. But yeah, it's something that I think Roses need to figure out quickly. If it was Robert Rossatoyo that was a problem, then this is going to be the new coach's top priority, which is to get Roses on the same page, all the players on the same page playing for each other. I feel like Elise Bennett, she scored 2 goals, right? It was 2 goals against Toronto. She scored the 2 goals. Yes, on paper it looks great. But at the end of the day, we've seen her past few games, and I do strongly feel that she is a completely different player than she was when she first started.
Alidu scored the penalty. Sorry, Alidu.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't sure if she scored it, but I do know that she scored it on that second
She drew the penalty.
But dude, Elise Bennett scored that second goal, but it was on a lucky bounce because her first shot went straight to the goalie, right?
Yeah, it's very uncharacteristic from Sabrina D'Angelo to spill that. There, when you're having a kind of a difficult run of form, I'll take it.
Yeah. But it's not.
You kind of get that like that pressure off your back.
Yeah, but
before that, she had 1 goal in 5 games. Before that, right. So I think this is kind of just a good okay, let's kind of get the gears turning again and.
Yeah, and look, and while I'm at it, I'll give my top and flop. Like my top was Lucy Capadonna, because yes, she's had her tough games this season and some matchups were not good for her, but I felt like especially clutch time when Toronto was really pushing, Lucy Capadonna came up with some massive saves that kept the Roses in the game. Again, I think she needs a lot more help because I don't think Megan Sauvé nor Aline Valérie Seto are the natural in that position, but I think she had a fantastic performance. My flop, this might surprise people. I don't care. But it was Lisa Paczynski. Just because I expect so much from her that she's shown, I feel like the past few games, even though she's still very fast and she can still run, build the attack really well, there's been moments where you can see her that she's going down on herself because things are not working out. And I just, for someone of her caliber, of her talent, I would think that the addition of Mimi Alidou in that offense would enable her to play her game more. But it feels like she has kind of taken a step back and is kind of trying to see how she fits in all this. So that's my top and my flop. What about you, Elias? What do you think of the game, top and flop?
Look, I'm gonna go ahead and say my flop now. My flop is collective. My flop is almost everybody, but not because they all played bad. It's because they all played slightly beneath the level, and it adds up. Because thanks to my top, Anna Karpenko had the game of her life.
Oh God,
she was outstanding. Lucy Capadona had some really nice 1v1 stops, but her gap control wasn't great. And she put herself in some weird position. She recovered well, but she's putting herself in the weird position to begin with. Anna Karpenko was, by every definition, faultless. She kept the clean sheet. She made save after save. She was the rock. If you told me that she'd be stringing together performances like this a year ago, I'd call you crazy.
Yeah.
Because from year to year, the build just mentally that Anna Karpenko has done is unbelievable. And we talk about how well Lucy Capadona is doing. We talk about how good Stephanie Hill and how Anne-Marie Seto and how good Megan Sauvé is taken to playing center back. She doesn't get the kind of love that she deserves over the course of this season because the people in front of her have been playing pretty well. All season, she's been unbelievable. She's been fantastic. And for me, she's earned a national team call-up.
Yeah.
She's earned the right to go to that camp because she has been exceptional.
Yeah.
And so, my top is the only reason that they didn't lose like 4-5-2.
Fair.
So Anna Karpenko.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Look, my bigger issue with how that game played out was that you have all this technical quality, but I didn't feel at any point like they were in control of the game. Even when they were able to keep the ball and reset and kind of wind down, it felt like it was because Toronto was letting them do it. And I get it, you're on the road and you don't have as much, the crowd behind you, don't have the control. This is also the best road team in the history of the league. By far. They're the best road team in the league. You should be used to controlling and navigating games like this. And they didn't. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because Lisa Paczynski is the first time she was playing in the 10 with Mimi Alidou, and it was her first time playing in the 10 since she came back from injury. She's been playing left wing back since then. This is Chloe Minas' first time back from being suspended, starting since she was suspended in the NSL. So maybe she has some rust to knock off. But I think, honestly, that this team right now kind of has to take a step back, regain their focus, because the games are coming fast. And this race at the end of the season is huge. And this win does a great job at putting at least some breathing room between them and Toronto, especially because Ottawa lost. So this was a huge weekend that could have gone very poorly. But now they need to kind of take a step back, regain their composure, move on from maybe the shock of the Robert dismissal, and get back to playing the way that they know how to.
Yeah. It's a big test for the girls. I think that's going to be an important one because, like you mentioned, the firing and just a lot of games happening and a very important part of the season. This is where you learn to be a professional. This is where you learn to be a professional soccer player and learn the business aspect of it all. So those players that have never seen this or have never been a part of this, something this big, it's now. You got to wake up and you got to realize, okay, this is the soccer business that I'm in. So speaking of business, we got to talk about our last our last topic. But before we get into it,
Let's end with a bad note.
let's
Yay!
go. Before our last subject of the night, if you're enjoying The Ball Is Round, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. It's the best way to support the show and help us grow. Be sure to leave your thoughts as in the comments as you've been doing this whole time. We read them, we interact, we love the back and forth. Agree, disagree, insult us, we don't care. We're here for it. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media channels for the latest news, takes, analysis, everything for CF Montreal, Rose FC, FC Super to Quebec, and more. All right, so we got to talk about it. FC Supra played against Atletico Ottawa. I think it's the third time in like a week and a half. Yeah.
Yes.
Something of that sort. And they were winning 1-0 for the longest time, and then gave up 2 goals late in the game, a red card to Mathis Chrétien. Just a shit show at the end of the last 20 minutes. It just doesn't make any sense because it's not usually we've gone on this show and we can talk about a one-off game that happens like, oh, what a terrible luck, what a terrible this and that and that. They'll be better next week. They got a bomb. It's already happened around 5 or 6 times at Stade Boréal or at other stadiums where there's been a red card, there's been giving up 3 goals, 2 goals, whatever it is. It's just something is not working. And I know we can go ahead and look at the lineup, but let's talk about the game, okay? So the lineup for FC Super de Quebec, at the top we had Loïc Quemi, Omar El Kalkouli, Ocho, Sean Rea, David Chouanière on the top, Safwan Memla, Alessandro Biello in the midfield, Leboeuf, Chrétien, Ferdinand, and Charles Gouste in the back line, and Joachim Mili at the goalie. So let's talk about the game. Okay, so like I said, to me, it has to be done. Some days we have to talk about the good, sometimes let's talk about the bad. But
always talk about the bad.
Let's just move on. But it's a shame to see because I do think that they played a decent game, Elias. I thought they played well. They seemed well on their way to actually beat Atletico Ottawa twice in a row. But it seems like these players just lose concentration when it matters most. And I don't know if it's a lack of maturity, a lack of understanding of a situation, a lack of really understanding the fact that the game does not stop until the final whistle blows. And that's a problem to me because we're no longer in the YMCA. We're no longer in CS Saint Laurent. We're no longer in the semi-pros. We are in the professional world, and anything can happen. You just watched the World Cup, man. We were all watching it, and you guys know that at the 95th minute, something crazy can happen, like 2 goals. So you never stop. And if there's players that are stopping at any point, is because they think that they have their minutes on the field guaranteed, and that they can just take some minutes off. But that's not the truth. You got to play all 90 minutes plus if you're there on the field, and you got to go hard all at it. So what are your thoughts on the game, Elias? I know I'm kind of going off there. I'm not even talking about excellent. No, I'm just talking about the ultimate results. Like what's happening right now?
So if soccer was 80 minutes, this would be the greatest team ever assembled. But this team switches off. And one of the main reasons, it's not a depth problem. It's not a tactical problem. It really is an individual focus problem. Because you look at this game, you look at the way that the previous game against Atletico when they tied 3-3. You look at the way that game ended. You look at the collapse against Atletico Ottawa a couple months ago when they lost 5-3 when they're up 3-0 at halftime or 3-1 at halftime. You look at, a lot of these games. You look at the game against Cavalry where they're up 1-0. They're doing great. And then they concede again at the death. And then they drop 2 points. All these games are individual focus mistakes. And it's not even one person. Every game it's somebody new. It is a pandemic. And so now I have to look to the two things specifically. It's the leadership core and it's the staff. Because how does a leadership keep the team engaged and locked in when you get into the dying moments? And how does the coaching staff either create an environment, train, or prepare these teams to play a full, focused, and concentrated 90 minutes? And the answer for both of those is I don't see it, because it's happened so many times now, right?
Yeah.
They played a really solid 70 minutes, right? They were not as sharp as they were against Ottawa in the Canadian Championship, but they were still good. They were controlling the game. They were not giving Ottawa a single sniff at Joachim Milly until they completely switched off on the first goal. You lose your mark. You lose a header on an outswinger, which is already unacceptable. And then you lose your mark and you give a free goal. And then 5 minutes later, you completely leave free headers, right? And I remember, right, at the midseason report, I said that I was most disappointed in Ziad Zinabzi.
Yes.
Because he has the potential to be not just the best left back in the league, but arguably the best player in the league, to be on the same level as Shanrea and every other player of the year contender. He's that good. He's that talented, but he switches off. He's too complacent. He goes into cruise control sometimes. And I think it's because he's so talented that he needs to kind of almost be brought down to the reality of, I have to be on all the time, regardless of where the ball is. Because he wasn't threatened. The ball was on the other side of the field on the winning goal. But the thing is, he did not clock the run coming in. He was too busy with the guy behind him.
Yeah. The
cross goes to the guy behind you, that's fine, because the header's not going in from there, and he's not Zidane that's going to hit a half volley. You have to track the run in front of you. And then he loses his shit when the ball goes in, because nobody, whether it was a midfielder or Mrs. Chrétien, who again has his back to everything, you're not going to communicate it. You mark that guy until you trade him off and your center back comes. That's your job. That's why you're looking. That's why you're holding that angle. I forget who it was from, but I saw a tweet that's really interesting because Thomas Leboeuf, by the way, Thomas Leboeuf had a really solid game at left back.
He got beat a few times. I don't want to say solid.
Team defense is fine. I don't mind if my fullback gets beat, because as team defense, everything was contained. He contributed very well to the offense. He got himself in some weird positions, but he contributed very well to the build-out, and his team defense was very solid. Remember, Luca Petrasso's not a good 1v1 defender either, but he's a great team defender. Thomas Leboeuf reminds me a lot of that because he partners very well with Menzies Chrétien. If that's the case, continue trusting Thomas Leboeuf and push Ziad Zinabzi up the field. Because now you can have David Choignard, Louis Quemi, and Ziad Zinabzi as your front three. The experiment of unless that's the position, the only position he wants to play, and nothing else. We spoke with Charles Auguste a couple weeks ago. He said, I wanted to play right back when I came back. I told Nick Rizaghi that straight up. I want to play right back. Unless the same thing happened with Abzi, where he says, I only want to play left back. He needs to play further up the pitch. He needs to. I'm not putting this entire loss on him. I kind of went off into a rant that's not about the game in and of itself. It's about where I want to see arguably your most talented player.
Yeah.
But as a whole, both the staff and the leaders need to do a lot more to kind of focus and really see out these final stages of the game. Edgar's saying it has to be a fitness issue. It's not.
No,
he's played 90 minutes. He's been dealing with a nagging injury on and off for most of the season. But in terms of fitness, when he's ready to play, he can play 90. That's not the issue. He literally just goes into cruise control sometimes. And even his cruise control is excellent with the ball. But in possession, in defense, when you're on cruise control, that's death. And you concede easy, preventable goals like that.
Yeah, and you know, Edgar, just to kind of say that, because yes, it's easy to say that it's a fitness issue. No, these boys, they can run 90 plus minutes. They can. They are fit. The issue is the lack of concentration. And that's something when I went to practice on Friday, Elias, I noticed, and I asked this to Nick in the pregame press conference, because I noticed that there were moments in practice where Nick had to say, guys, let's go, wake up, run. It's almost like in practice, they are moments where they're also having lapses of concentration where they're jogging somewhere, they're half-assing a certain drill. And it's like, this is a problem because it almost feels like they have a lack of understanding that the intensity that they have in practice going from drill to drill, performing drills, translates over to games. Because that intensity, that 90 minutes of concentration on purely on your position, on what's going on, as you mentioned, kind of reading the game and catching players onto your center back. Those are things that in practice has to be excellent so that when you get to game time, it's perfect. But it's happened too often. It is not just this game. It's happened way too often that it's almost like the other teams that FC Supra are playing against understand that, hey, this is a vulnerable moment for FC Supra. They seem a little bit excited to finish the game. Let's pounce on them. Let's go ahead and pressure because they're vulnerable right now. I also felt like Nick Rozagi, in a sense, almost parked the bus with the 1-0 very early on in the 75th minute. And I was like, but what? Why? I mean, it's you still have a shot. And then they tied 1-1, and he continued parking the bus. Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I know I'm saying on the players, but there's something that the staff needs to change. Either they need to have a serious conversation, forget the football field, let's have a serious conversation. Do you understand what it means to be a professional on and off the field? Do you get it? Because if you don't, this is not for you.
Yep.
So this is, again, we're not even talking so much 2-1 or the goals or the X's. I'm just, talking about this same result, same performance, week after week. It's going to get us nowhere. And yes, you're going to have that 1-off or 2-off wins, which are great, but teams are going to catch on. Teams are going to say, hey, we've already played them 6 games where they continue showing the same tendencies towards the end of the game, where they kind of take their foot off the pedal. And just because the coach decides to park the bus doesn't mean you stop playing defense because you have 2 players helping you out. You still need to play that same intensity that you showed throughout the first 80 minutes of the game. So, yeah, that's, again, kind of going my own rant.
That's why my flop is not a player. It's Nick Rozagi.
Yeah.
The Conde substitution was fantastic. If anything, I want Conde to start. He's earned the right to start the next couple of games and put Kwemi on the wing. I think it's right. And Kwemi, Conde, Chouanière is the best front 3 that you can have right now. But Didier Nabzi, Aboubakar Sissoko, Clément Baya, and Riyad Bey came on, and it felt negative. Even if these are not negative substitutions straight up, but Clément Baya is a more defensive profile than David Chouanière. Riyad Bey is a more defensive profile than Loïc Kwemi. Aboubakar Sissoko is a more defensive profile than Safwan Mla. The only purely attacking substitution that was made was Didier Nabzi for Thomas Leboeuf. But everything felt negative. And except for Conde, nobody contributed anything. So now I'm looking at myself. Safwan Mla had arguably his best game. He was my top, by the way. Arguably had his best game in a Super jersey. Not just because of the goal, but because he was everywhere. He was controlling. He was winning back possession. He was shooting. He hit the post as well. He was everywhere. This was fantastic. But you take him off at the hour mark? Is it a fitness issue? He played a big chunk at the midweek, I understand. But now you have a bit of time off before you play against Forge. They play on Wednesday. They play, right? So you still have, the chance to compete. But the more important game between the two, between Forge and Atletico, is Atletico. That's a 6-point game. So I feel like the substitutions were miscalculated. And every single one of them almost took the team back a step. So I don't know if you want to give yours, but
I mean, it's pretty much the same.
Overall disappointing.
Yeah, pretty much the same stuff. I really liked Alessandro Biello's game. I find like he's starting to find his rhythm. He's starting to understand, which is what we wanted to see him from the beginning.
But he's back now. He's so
dude. If he can stay healthy and not suspended, I think once Alessandro Biello like finds his rhythm, it's going to be a very interesting player. He should have been as good as Sean Ray is right now if he would have had that continuity, but he didn't. And now it might be too little too late. But we'll see. We'll see, because I'm not sure what the contract situation is of these players. I am asking around to see what they are. But yeah, that will be my top, Alessandro Biello. But my flop, as you mentioned, man, the substitutes. I mean, they were weird. They clearly impacted the game in a very negative way. It did not help at all. But yeah, just of lack of understanding really what was the game plan, what were the players told, and just overall just a poor game preparation for this same player. While Atletico Ottawa clearly understood that this was a vulnerable team.
Yeah. Anyway, massive damage done to FC Supra's playoff chances. Of course, there's still plenty of soccer left. I think there's still about a dozen games before we call it quits, including one more against Ottawa. So we'll get the chance to get their lick back, but that remains to be seen because Ottawa, at least in CPL action, appears to have their number. And on that wonderfully delightful, positive, fantastic note, that's going to do it for episode 274 of the Balls Around podcast. Thank you, everyone that stuck with us through a very busy episode. 3 games. Usually we get through it relatively quickly, but there's so much stuff going on off the field. Next week promises to be probably just as chaotic because who doesn't love some midweek action, some chaos, and whatever else it is that, professional Montreal soccer seems to love to throw at us.
Please don't fire another coach.
Look, the podcast is free. The podcast will always be free. So thank you so much to all of you that listen. If you are feeling a little bit generous, we have a Patreon that helps. If you want to contribute anything, it lets us do the work we do. It lets us pay for the stuff to make this podcast a reality and to just, keep churning out the content. If you can't contribute any money, it's totally fine. There's a free level to our Patreon. You still get the majority of the good stuff. You still get first dibs on every video, every interview we put out. If we do Op Watch, where we bring in expert media from around MLS to kind of preview games against CF Montreal, all that fun stuff. We break it down, and you are always appreciated, even if it's just for a free subscription. We love every single one of you, whether it's social media, Patreon, YouTube, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us again, and we will see you next week, episode 275.
Let's go.
Big 275.
275.
And hopefully the review of the first official minutes of Alexis Sanchez right here on the ball.
Let's bet. Let's put money on it. Let's go.
I'm not going that far. Right here on the Ball is Round podcast.
Let's go, baby.